Welcome back to the best division in football with your boys Authentic and The Beard, the best television show not on TV, and we are in the playoffs, y'all. The Wildcard round is here. Y'all know my co-host is extremely excited. The Giants are not, because we are going to be sitting at home watching this game. 2 Week 1 rematches in the NFC East concerning the playoffs here. The Packers are going to be taking on the Eagles, and the Washington Commanders are going to be taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who took care of business in Week 1 against them. This should be a very interesting matchup. I'm really glad to be able to cover the NFC East and have 2 teams representing our division in this year's playoffs. The surprising Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that a lot of us thought would be there. So without further ado, man, let's bring in the man of the hour, the best co-host in the country. I see him backstage looking like he getting ready to come out for a prize fight right now. Shout out to my Dukes one time. Y'all know what it is, man. The Beard and his Washington Commanders are in the building. What's going on, my dog?
Listen, I am on cloud 9, brother. Cloud 9. I was telling my wife, for those of you who don't know, I was telling Josie the other day, I said, this is the first time I think in my life. Obviously, the college football playoffs are a little bit, different nowadays. But first time ever, Notre Dame and Washington Commanders, Redskins football team, are in the playoffs in the same year. So, I'm going crazy right now. So it's wild. And then obviously last week was. It just kind of was like the epitome of the way that the season went for the Commanders, and to have like Marcus Mariota, who we've talked about countless times in different situations in regards to, free agent quarterbacks, bridge quarterbacks and stuff like that. So it's just kind of, it's wild to be where I am. I thought the Commanders could win 10 games, and I thought I was crazy when I said that. And at one point in the season, we asked the question, or you asked me, what do you think? 12 wins maybe? Because when there was that beginning point in the season, we were like, Jaden Daniels, MVP.
Yeah.
We're going to win the division. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't quite that, but it was still way beyond expectations. And I know the schedule was a little bit easier. And I know we faced a lot of second-rate quarterbacks, let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? So, all of those things, I'm not ignoring that still. I am so happy. And I saw people upset with the way that the Dallas game went and stuff. And I'm just just enjoy this. People were questioning, oh my God, what about Jaden? He was in the medical tent and this and that. And it's just dude, he's fine. We won 12 games. We're in the playoffs. It was crazy. And I'm super stoked. Obviously, Notre Dame won last Thursday. We played tonight. Big game against Penn State.
Big game tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing that game, and some quarterbacks on the line here. Obviously, not your quarterback, but
and then obviously the news in the NFL has just been going crazy. A lot of firings, which I thought were incorrect firings. Antonio Pierce being one, and then obviously Gerard Mayo being the other.
Rand Carthen for me, the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. To me, that was the most surprising one. I mean, they only gave him 2 seasons over there, didn't allow him to draft a quarterback in the first round. People might think that Will Levis was, a franchise type of decision, which I don't think it was at all. There's a very stark difference in drafting a quarterback in the first round than in the second round. You look at the contracts in the first round that are guaranteed contracts. Second round quarterbacks have to obviously negotiate their own contracts, but I thought that was a little bit just a little bit too premature, considering that he did a really good job of bringing in weapons too for the Tennessee Titans as well. And, to figure out what they had at the quarterback position, and they realized this year that, likely Will Levis isn't that guy. Maybe there were some decisions, made upon the speculation that they might be drafting a quarterback too, and I think that could have been something that had to do with it. But nonetheless, Rand Carthen, a guy who I thought was doing a pretty good job over there, brought in players like L'Jarius Sneed, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. I thought he did a good job. Tyler Boyd, tons of talent.
I think that the biggest thing you said there too, and this is obviously relevant to the Giants situation to a certain degree, right? Is that they had Will Levis, right? And they literally did everything they possibly could within the parameters of free agency to define how good Will Levis was. Yep. And I think as a GM, that's literally what your job is at that point in the franchise with that quarterback like Will Levis. I posed a question on my Twitter at the beginning before the season even started. Is the Tennessee Titans receiving core a top 5 receiving core? Because Ridley, Hopkins, and Boyd on paper That sounds amazing. And obviously,
and they had Traylon Burks healthy at the beginning of the season before he was put on IR too, another former first-round draft pick. So I mean, they were stacked. I mean, I forget the tight end's name. He's got a funny last name too.
Akinawane, I think it's
something like that. But he's also a productive player as well. So I thought they had everything rolling for them, but the results obviously were not satisfactory of that. And the owner of the Tennessee Titans is a little bit of a maniac as well. So
They fired the GM for the Raiders today too. 1 year.
1 year, man.
1 year as a GM. Like, what are you supposed to do?
1 year GM, 1 year coach too. They both, Pierce got the job at the exact same time. So definitely puzzling situations going around the NFL here as far as guys being fired. And like you said, Gerard Mayo, that one was interesting too. I mean, you committed to the plan of bringing in a bridge quarterback like Jacoby Brissett, drafting your future franchise guy. You even doubled down on the franchise guy and tried to get Joe Milton in the 6th round as well. Things don't go right. You don't win enough games. You end up firing the coach. Now, I thought that was a little bit premature, but maybe they already had their sights set on Mike Vrabel, possibly maybe in the middle of the season as well. Yeah. He's looking like a top candidate to get a head coaching job.
Shout out to my guy, Kevin, Commonwealth Picker. He is a hardcore Liberty University football fan. He said Malik Willis is better than both of their quarterbacks. Traded, then beat them. That was the end.
Yep. And Giants fans, they want to find a way to make it like Malik Willis is not a guy. You know that, right? I'm rooting for Malik Willis, man. And I don't know if he'll be a Green Bay Packer come the end of the season, but if he's not, might be a guy that the New York Giants could consider bringing in as a project or something like that. But I think Malik Willis has a bright future ahead of him if he can continue to do the things that he did this season when Jordan Love was out of the lineup.
Yeah, and we'll see another Liberty quarterback playing for Colorado next year, or competing at least for the starting job at Colorado. So the starting quarterback from Liberty transferred over there. So a lot of football going on
Carson Beck
right now.
That news came out today that he's going back, going to enter the transfer protocol as well. And a lot of people are saying it's looking like it could be the University of Miami where he ends up being.
It's gonna be a wild off season between the draft and free agency, and obviously, shout out to the New York Giants. You guys did the impossible, which I thought was not gonna be possible, even though most people thought it was possible. Retaining the head coach and the general manager. So shout out.
That's funny. We really haven't talked about that much over here. We kind of took a break at the beginning of the week and whatnot, but it's been a bit puzzling. But at the same time, I think that I kind of expected Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen to be back. And, this kind of just seems like a one more year type of thing. I don't know if you remember me saying this. Year one, Colin Cowherd actually was the first one to say this, that after Brian Daboll won Coach of the Year and the Giants went to the playoffs, won 9 games, that no matter what it was that you thought that Brian Daboll was going to be here for, and no matter how the circumstances panned out, put an extra year on top of that, because that Coach of the Year and that playoff berth and victory definitely was going to yield well towards the New York Giants. And I've always thought that it was going to buy him an extra year, and here we are. This is that extra year, kind of the reasons why I thought that you could expect Brian Daboll to be back as the head coach. Joe Schoen being a guy that I think should have been a little bit more viewed as upon the guy who was on the hot seat, but it seems like in New York that Brian Daboll was the guy that was more likely to be out. Instead, we get both of them back here. I think the big question mark, and I'm going to talk about this today on Bleacher Report, is what about Shane Bowen? Is Shane Bowen going to come back as the defensive coordinator? And I expect him to be back as well.
Yeah, and then on the offensive side of the ball is going to be kind of interesting too. Are we guys going to move on from Kafka? Is the play calling going to be somebody else? Is Daboll going to continue to call plays? So there's a lot of questions there, obviously, and I think a lot of that will probably be something that plays into what you guys end up doing in the draft too. Obviously, at pick number 3, you have to kind of wait and see what happens at 1 and 2.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. So before we get off into these 2 matchups here that involve the NFC East, I see your boy Door Gunner is in the building one time representing for your Commanders, man.
Shout out Door Gunner with the $2 super chat. Says, I will be in the stands being a menace in Tampa Bay. I don't expect anything else from you, Door Gunner. We appreciate the love and the support. I know George from Big Doug and George, the show that they do on the Commanders. I know George is going to be down there. What's crazy is he bought tickets like a pair. There's a wild story. I'll have to ask him about it on Twitter, but he bought tickets for the Tampa Bay playoff game, expecting this to be the matchup for the Commanders like weeks ago.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting because
foresight right there. Wow.
We thought it was going to be LA or Philly, and then out of nowhere, here comes Tampa. So obviously, it's an interesting matchup. Both of these matchups we're going to be talking about today, both teams played each other in the first week of the regular season. So we've come full circle, my friend.
Yeah, we really have. Now, is there any possibility that Washington could get a home playoff game in the divisional round?
I don't think so. I haven't really put that into
because they're the 6th seed. So if the 5 seed wins, I'm not sure if you guys are going to play the team that had to bye or not. But that's something to look into. I'm curious about that because, man, if today's game was here in the DMV, I don't know if we would, or well, not today's game, but Sunday's game.
Yeah.
I don't know if we would be sitting on our couches. I think we would have had to have gone at least to the tailgating party.
Oh, for sure.
That parking lot, bad weather or not, is going to be lit at that game. I'm definitely looking forward to that matchup and all of Sunday's matchups for that matter. This playoff series this year are a lot of close games that are going to be very difficult to choose. Let's start off with this Philadelphia Eagles matchup. They're going to be taking on my doppelganger squad, the Green Bay Packers. And this is a game where the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be at home for this one. So let's get right into it. Man, it is playoff time. I'm a little bit jealous, but at the same time, I'm absolutely, team Beard for the rest of the remaining of the playoffs. I'm rooting for the Washington Commanders all day. I want to see them win. I'm not one of these fans that's looking at it like, I want to see a first-round exit from the Commanders so I can feel better about being a terrible New York Giants fan. Nothing like that, obviously. Packers are coming in here as the 7th seed, a really good 7th seed, maybe the best 7th seed in the entire playoffs here. I think you got the Broncos on the opposite side. The Philadelphia Eagles are the number 2 seed here. Kickoff is Sunday at 4:30. Eagles are favored by 4.5. The over-under in both of these games we're going to cover today are very high. This one is 45.5. The Eagles finished the year 14-3. The Packers finished the year 11-6. Last week, the Eagles junior varsity backup team took on the New York Giants, and they still won that game 20-13. The Packers lost to the Bears. Shout out Tanner McKee, played a really good game. I think Tanner McKee also has a bright future ahead of him as well. The Packers lost to the Bears 24-22. Last meeting, the Eagles did beat the Packers 34-29. That was in week 1 this year. The Eagles have won 3 of the last 5 matchups versus the Packers. The Packers have won 6 of the last 10. So this is an extremely even matchup when you look at the history between these two teams. The Eagles won 12 of their last 13 games to finish the season. Their only loss coming to the Beards, Washington Commanders, in a tight game where they lost Jalen Hurts to a concussion. And we haven't seen Jalen Hurts since that game. The Eagles ended up losing that one 36-33. For me, I'm looking at, both of these games today from an NFC East perspective, and how do you approach these games and try to come out of these two matchups with a victory here. And I think for the Eagles, they have a multitude of ways that they can beat you. We've talked about this all year long. I think you either got to start with get Saquon going early in this game or start with some early explosive plays. This, in return, should keep the Packers off balance. Saquon Barkley, 100 yards rushing in 6 of his last 8 games. We already know he went over 2,000 yards for the season. They had him on the bench on ice last week, going up against the New York Giants with the JV team and whatnot. But the Eagles are dangerous. And this was one of the stats that I looked into that I thought was very glaring that will present a problem for the Packers if the Eagles can indeed get to this. The Eagles, when they have 2 players go over 100 yards, minus the quarterback, they are a very dangerous team. They beat the Dallas Cowboys just a couple of weeks back, 41-7. Saquon, Devonta Smith, and A.J. Brown all over 100 yards in that game. Against the L.A. Rams, they beat the Rams 37-20. Saquon and A.J. Brown both went over 100 yards. Smith and Brown both went over 100 yards versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game that was looked at as a bit of a, get the Philadelphia Eagles right or get them ready type of game, because all the competition before that was against teams that were under 500. Now, week 1 is the only time 2 players went over 100 yards, and it was not a blowout for the Philadelphia Eagles. And that game was going up against the Green Bay Packers, where Saquon and A.J. Brown both went over 100 yards, and the Packers ended up losing that game only by 5 points. The Eagles right now, Jalen Hurts is so important to this offense. I like Tanner McKee. He did some good things last week as a guy who's a practice squad, 3rd-string quarterback coming in for relief for Jalen Hurts. But the Eagles are undefeated when passing for more than 250 yards this season. It's tied best in the NFL right now. And I think that you're going to have to find a way to either get Jalen Hurts over 250, get 2 players that go over 100, or you're probably going to be in a pretty tight game here against the Green Bay Packers. Jalen Hurts practiced this week. It's been nothing but good stuff coming out of practice for them. He did suffer that concussion against Washington in Week 16. Mekhi Becton said that Jalen Hurts looked great at practice this past week. Solid year for Jalen Hurts, too. I know a lot of people are kind of looking at Jalen Hurts like, you know, he was a guy in 2022 that was looked at as a guy who was a top 5 quarterback on a lot of people's list, pretty much a guaranteed top 10 quarterback. People are saying pump the brakes in 2023. Now, this year, I feel like people are kind of undervaluing Jalen Hurts' value this season. And I think the passing yards is a big part of it. Just 2,903 passing yards this year, 14 rushing touchdowns, though, to combine with the 18 passing touchdowns and just 5 interceptions. He has double-digit rushing touchdowns in 4 straight seasons. Jalen Hurts is still, you know, a reputable guy that is living up to that reputation that I gave him when he first became the starter as a red zone maniac. When you get in the red zone, Jalen Hurts knows how to get that ball into the end zone to get past the plane. That's been a thing that he has done consistently throughout his career. Now, the balance of the offense has been extremely influenced by Saquon Barkley this year versus last year. The Eagles are number 1 in rush play percentage this year. They're running the ball 55.7% of the time. It's 10% higher than it was last season. They were 7th last year at 45%. So, you know, a narrative that I heard coming in, especially when Saquon saw a lot of success early on in this season, was, oh, the Eagles do this with any running back. They did it with what was my dude that went to Carolina on that big contract? Miles Sanders. Yeah. They did it with DeAndre Swift. And I guess people were trying to say that those running backs are comparable to Saquon Barkley. And if you look at the recent history, that is absolutely not the case. Saquon Barkley just absolutely went apeshit this year. Yeah. Now, Jordan Love has a season filled with injuries this year. A bit of a sophomore slump, going from 32 touchdowns to 25 touchdowns this year. 11 interceptions in both seasons, but the passing yards a year ago were just, you know, night and day from what we saw this year. Almost 1,000 more yards through the air for Jordan Love. He did miss 2 games this season where Malik Willis came in and played really well. And the Packers, again, for another straight season with Jordan Love at the quarterback position, do not have a 1,000-yard wide receiver for Love's second straight season here. And guys like Reed have kind of, you know, we looked at those guys like maybe they could potentially be a wide receiver 1, but I think this year proved that those guys are not that. The last thing I want to talk about with this matchup, the defense. The Packers this year are winning games much differently than they won games last season. The defense has given up less points than they did a year ago. They're going from 21.4 points per game being allowed in 2023 to just 19.9 this year. Their rush defense went from 28th in 2023 to 13th in 2024. And the numbers are drastically different. In 2023, they were allowing 127.1 yards per game on the ground. This year, they're allowing just under 100 yards at 99.4 rushing yards per game. The takeaways. In 2023, they were averaging 1.1 takeaways per game. It was 26 in the NFL. In 2024, 1.8, which doesn't seem like that big of a difference, but in a 17-game season, it adds up over time. They're having 1.8 takeaways per game in 2024. They went from 26th to 4th. And I'm not going to put too much light on one player.
I mean,
right?
Let's do it. We might as well.
The New York Giants, we're going to talk about this later today on Bleacher Report too. The New York Giants now have the second fewest interceptions in the entire NFL. And last year, I want to say they were second in the NFL in interceptions. I know the number. I just can't remember exactly where they were ranked. They went from 18 interceptions to just 5 this season. And Xavier McKinney obviously plays a big role in that. The Green Bay Packers have another former New York Giant over there playing in that secondary as well, too, in Corey Ballantyne. So seems to be that the New York Giants aren't as terrible at maybe assessing the talent as we think they are. But when it comes to developing the talent,
or giving the talent money, the right talent money.
I mean, that's a whole nother topic. You know, who to pay. They obviously don't know who to pay. But for me, with the Packers and the Eagles game here, both teams take care of the ball. It should be cold on Sunday in Philly. You got to take care of the ball here. And we know that, you know, pressure bust pipes and cold weather make some people completely fold. We saw it with Tua in the playoffs, you know, just recently. Explosive plays, super, super, super important here. Jordan Love has almost double the amount of explosive pass plays that Jalen Hurts has this year. Jordan Love has 27 explosive pass plays on the year. That's 4th in the NFL. Jalen Hurts has 15 explosive pass plays, which is 22nd in the NFL. But Hurts has 7 explosive pass plays for a touchdown. Jordan Love has 6 explosive pass plays for a touchdown. So I think that's something to keep your eye on. I'll bring it back to the beginning. For the Philadelphia Eagles, for me, it's either going to be explosive plays in the passing game. It's either going to be explosive plays from Saquon Barkley in the backfield and an early start, which Nick Sirianni has struggled at doing throughout portions of the season. As of late, we've seen him kind of commit to Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley did lead the NFL in rushing attempts. I think you got to rely on that as well. It's either one of those or we're going to have an extremely close game come Sunday between these two teams.
Damn, I love talking football with Authentic. Let me tell you guys.
I try, bro.
These teams are very similar. To me, like when I look at the construction of their rosters, right, and the players that they have and the coaching, like not necessarily the coaching personalities, because there's Nick Sirianni's on an island by himself there, but there are a lot of similarities with these two teams, and I think that's going to make for a great matchup. And we saw that early on. Now listen, week one is week one. Okay, the teams changed 5 times over between week 1 and the first round of the playoffs, right? But I think we saw the potential of how good that matchup was in week 1. You got 2 great young quarterbacks. You got a lot of explosive ability between the wide receiver position. You know, Jaden Reed had his best game of the year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1. And that was like, oh, yes, I drafted him in fantasy football. I'm like, week 1, it was Xavier Worthy and Jaden Reed. And I'm like, yes, you know, but it's been a little bit of a rough year, as you mentioned, for a lot of these wide receivers. And obviously they're not going to have Christian Watson for this game, you know. And then the 2 running backs from new teams in Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley.
Terrible teams too.
Yeah, they're leaving the Raiders and the Giants here. And it's interesting. Saquon Barkley, as we all know, is the number 1 running back in the league, 2,005 yards, okay? Josh Jacobs was number 6, and there's a big gap here. But there's a big gap between everybody and Saquon, except for Derrick Henry, I think was the closest one there. But, you know, Jacobs came in number 6 with 1,329 yards on the season. Barkley was 8th in the league in touchdowns with 13. Josh Jacobs was 4th in the league in touchdowns with 15. You know, so it's interesting to see. I think this is you think about these two teams, the running game is going to be important. And I know it's the Beard saying that, and he says that about every game. I understand
that. He'd be right about it about every game, too.
Listen, 7 of the top 10 rushing teams in the NFL this year are in the playoffs. So I'm just going to leave that one out there for the RTDB
Similar numbers
fan.
To last year as well. Last year had a lot of guys in the top 10 in the playoffs as well.
So it's very interesting. Obviously, you know, Love got a little banged up last week. Hurts is coming in off of the concussion, not playing for a couple weeks, so that's something to keep your eye on. You talked about the turnovers and the difference of Green Bay this year. Both of these teams are really good in turnover differential. The Green Bay Packers are tied for the 3rd best turnover differential in the NFL at plus 12. The Philadelphia Eagles are 4th in the NFL in turnover differential at plus 11. So there's a very interesting, you know, situation here. And then you want to talk about something else is turnover percentage. Green Bay turnover percentage, number 3 at 16.2. Philadelphia is number 5 at 14.1. Okay, so, the turnovers are going to be a huge part of this game, obviously. And then the passing thing is kind of interesting.
Go back to the turnover numbers real quick. So, you said the Packers were 4th in the NFL?
In turnover differential at plus 11, number 4 in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And
the
Green
Eagles?
Green Bay is number 3 at plus 12.
Okay.
So both of these teams are forcing turnovers. I mean, they've had spans where they've turned the ball over, but they're obviously defensively, they're just forcing so many turnovers. So that's going to be something to kind of keep your eye on right there. And then you want to talk about some of the passing numbers here, because we talked about, you talked about Jordan Love and then the difference in his passing yards, and Jalen Hurts and how some people look at his passing yards. Green Bay is number 12 in passing yards per game here, 223.9. Philadelphia's pass defense, number 1 in the league, ladies and gentlemen. They're only allowing 174.2 yards per game passing. Now, Green Bay, this is something that you're going to keep your eye out on too, because we talk a lot about this Philadelphia defense throughout the season. And I think you have to give the offensive line credit here. You have to give Jordan Love credit here, and you have to give the offensive game plan credit here. Green Bay Packers have allowed the 2nd fewest sacks in the NFL. They've only allowed 22 sacks in 17 games. So
that's incredible.
Like that is like your dream. You want to dream like that, right? Especially because I remember when Jordan Love goes down in that first game, we're thinking the season is over for the Green Bay Packers. You know what I'm saying? And shout out Malik Willis, did an incredible job for the Green Bay Packers. And I talked a little bit about this, I think it was last week. I said that the identity kind of changed a little bit, I think, for the Green Bay Packers when Jordan Love went down and they realized that they could lean on Josh Jacobs. I think that they decided that they were going to become a little bit more of a run team than a pass team than what they probably initially thought that they were going to be going into this season.
Yeah.
And I think that, being able to lean on Josh Jacobs as much as they did this year proved to be important for them in winning games and having that balance that we love to see when it comes to teams. And you talk about some interesting numbers here. You want to go back to the interceptions with Xavier McKinney is obviously a spotlight here. Green Bay defensively has the third highest interception percentage in the NFL at 3%. They are intercepting passes on defense at a 3% rate. And that's an incredible number because Philadelphia has the fourth lowest interception rate offensively at 1.3%. So 1.3% of their passes are ending in interceptions, where Green Bay's, intercepting at 3%. So it's going to be an interesting battle there in that secondary. And then, you talked about the rushing yards, Green Bay's improvement in rushing, that 99.4 yards per game. They're going up against a juggernaut, the number 2 rushing team in the country, nation. I'm thinking college football in the NFL at 179.3 yards per game.
It's crazy.
And on the flip side, though, Josh Jacobs, that Green Bay rushing attack is number 5 in the league. 146.8. They have a little bit of an advantage there against Philadelphia's run defense. I think that's going to be an area they're going to be able to attack.
So 146.8 for the Green Bay Packers, and then for the Eagles it was 170 something.
179.3.
Yeah, it's a pretty big difference, but goes back to what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is that the quarterback aiding the running game, which I don't look at Jalen Hurts as a guy who is truly making the running, the running plays from the quarterback position, but I'm sure it is helping a lot. But that seems pretty even. That seems pretty even if you take the quarterback out of the equation.
And then you have Philadelphia's run defense is not as good as Green Bay's. They're 10th. They're giving up about 5 more yards per game than Green Bay is defensively. Both of these teams are good points allowed. Eagles are allowing 17.8. That's the second fewest. Green Bay's 6th fewest at 19.9 points per game. Both these teams, it's going to be an interesting red zone matchup. Green Bay is number 10 offensively, 59.4. Philadelphia is 6th defensively at 50%. Offensively, you got Philadelphia, surprisingly, is 13th best in the red zone offensively at 57.4. They're going up against Green Bay's red zone defense, 13th worst in the NFL, allowing 60% of the time. And then you go into some of the third down numbers. I think the most glaring one is going to be third down defense. Philadelphia, they have the third best third down defense in the NFL. They're only allowing opponents to convert on third down 35.5%. Both these teams are good at controlling the ball. That's a theme that you'll notice with a lot of these teams in the playoffs, especially the 4 teams we're going to be talking about today. Philadelphia is the number 1 team in the NFL in time of possession. That's 32 and 22 seconds.
That makes me want to look up some data throughout the past couple of seasons, like where the leading rushing team
is with time of possession.
Falls in with time of possession, because I bet those two correlate and help each other out.
Absolutely, they have to. So I don't know. This is a really good matchup. I think that, I looked at a lot of these matchups for the NFL in the playoffs, and I think that we have some good games here. I'm excited. I think that there's not a lot of discrepancy as far as one team I feel like is going to dominate another team. A lot of these teams have played each other already, so I like Green Bay's chances. I just don't know if I can pick Green Bay. I think that, Philadelphia, in my opinion, Philadelphia and Green Bay are very similar, but Philadelphia is just a little bit better at everything that Green Bay is good at. And for me, that's going to make me lean towards Philadelphia. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game by a final score of 29-27.
Close one. I think if the scores around that, the Eagles are going to have to make some mistakes. I like that you brought up turnovers, and I do think that the Green Bay Packers are a little bit built better to recover from the turnovers. I feel like Jordan Love almost gives you a turnover a game almost, probably just under that or something like that. But I want to give you a couple of numbers that might sway you in the opposite direction, or maybe double down on your Philadelphia Eagles take here. One thing I think we need to consider, the coaching matchup. Last season, when the Dallas Cowboys came into the playoffs and they were facing the Green Bay Packers, most of us picked the Dallas Cowboys to win that game, right?
Except for me.
And the biggest difference was the coaching matchup. Matt LaFleur and that defense as well came out there, and they had a game plan and an attack to shut down Dak Prescott early on, make him play behind the sticks and behind the scoreboard. I think that recipe right there could have the Eagles and Jalen Hurts in a lot of trouble. You get down like 10 points, 14 points, start pressing a little bit and, have an urgency to try to get in the end zone before the half, let's say, you could possibly put yourself in a situation where you're making more mistakes than you even made in the beginning of the game to put you in a hole. So for the Eagles, take care of the ball. Rushing the ball is going to be more important for the Philadelphia Eagles than it is for the Green Bay Packers. I feel like the Green Bay Packers could get away from the running game and still win this game in a major way. The Eagles are 13-2 when rushing for 120 or more yards this season. It's fifth best in the NFL. The Eagles are also 18-4 when rushing for 120 or more yards since 2023. That's sixth best in the NFL. Saquon Barkley has hit the rushing yards over in 13 of his last 17 games, and Saquon Barkley has hit the receptions under in 12 of his last 17 games. So this, I won't say narrative, but this thought that Saquon Barkley was going to be this big
dual threat,
a dual threat coming out the backfield and be able to aid the passing game has not necessarily been the thing this year. The Packers, the red zone, you talked about the red zone, and this is the last thing I'll say about this game. The Packers are 6-3 when they convert at least 55% of their red zone trips into touchdowns this season. That's 10th best in the NFL. So if you're not going to score from outside of the red zone, which I don't think the Green Bay Packers really have an explosive enough offense to truly do that, you're going to have to take advantage of what you're doing in the red zone, maximize your opportunities, and when you get down there, you got to score when you're in the end zone as well. If you can keep it around over 55%, it's usually going to yield a victory for the Green Bay Packers. I'm right there with you. I don't see this game being as close as you do, though. I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to find a way to either get Saquon and one of these wide receivers over 100 yards or find a way to get Jalen Hurts over that 250 passing yards and walk away with the victory. I think the urgency for the Philadelphia Eagles is a little bit more of a, a little higher. There's a little bit more of a, we have to win this game right now type of vibe. Nick Sirianni lose in the first round in the wild card. They're really going to be talking about this guy being on the hot seat. So I'm really looking at the Eagles as the victor in this one. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles. You just got to, if you're an Eagles fan, you want to hope that Jalen Hurts doesn't miss a beat with the time that he missed with the concussion. That's very important. But I'm going to say the Philadelphia Eagles win this one 31-21. And I think the Packers will score late and make this one a little bit look closer than it truly was.
That's a little
we got
bit,
a couple super chats too.
A little bit closer than E Money Bentley's prediction of Philadelphia Eagles 45, Packers 17.
Hey, listen,
Go Birds, he says.
I wouldn't rule it out.
No,
I really wouldn't
rule it out either.
If you get the Philadelphia Eagles on all cylinders, that's what it's going to look like.
You cannot get away from that run game. Cannot get away from that run game.
Yeah, and I think Nick Sirianni's smart enough to commit to it, even if they're not having as much success. I think he'll commit to it because he knows it's going to open up things down the field. I mean, we saw A.J. Brown last week, or in his last week, put up some pretty big numbers. So I think they're going to be just fine. But last year's matchup against the Dallas Cowboys is what really makes me go, is Matt LaFleur going to come in here with a game plan to nullify everything that Jalen Hurts and this offense can do? I think it's possible. I'm not banking on it.
Yeah. So big shout out to the chat. We appreciate you guys chiming in with some of those scores. Big shout out to Door Gunner with the $2 super chat. Says you got a large Washington fan base in Tampa Bay. Listen, I would love to see it. That Tampa Bay is a tough place to play in, man. And it's going to be interesting. I'm kind of running with this narrative of Jaden Daniels playing better in his second matchups against teams than his first one. So we'll see how much that can continue, especially against Tampa Bay on the road in the playoffs. Big shout out, Door Gunner. We appreciate you, my friend. Back-to-back doors. This is like, when you walk in, you go in, you got to open the first door and then go into the second door. Back-to-back Door Gunners with a $2 super chat says Hurts, 14 rushing touchdowns for probably 14 total yards. I mean, I'd be curious to know how many of those 14 touchdowns are not push tushes.
Tush push.
But listen, I am not a tush push hater. I'm all for it. Like, listen, if you can do it and they can't stop it, just keep doing it. Like, what's that's how I mean, that's something that they created and they're able to run it. And
I feel like somebody on Twitter broke this down already, that a lot of his rushing touchdowns, didn't come from just a tush push, but that is something I tried to look it up real quickly, but I couldn't get no numbers on it. But when we get to the next show, I'll make sure to have some numbers on the tush push touchdowns for y'all for sure. Big shout out to Door Gunner, though, for supporting the channel, too. And my dog B-Rog is in the building, too.
Big shout out to B-Rog, and I appreciate you, putting in the enunciation there for us as well, because it just makes my life a lot easier. If you've ever been here and heard me try to say ubiquitously, you'd understand. So big shout out to B-Rog with the $2 super chat. Says, just excited to see good football as a Giants fan. I understand that. I think, most football fans enjoy good football, whether it's your team or not.
Mm-hmm. That's a big fact, man. And I will say this, though. A lot of these Giants fans are ready to get going to the next season, man, because it's going to be a pretty long off season for us, man. We have a lot of work to do, and we've dug ourselves into a massive ditch right now. I don't know how the New York Giants are going to climb out of it, but I'm with B-Rog on this one. It's definitely going to be an exciting playoffs, and I'm actually looking forward to it. Like, the Giants were so bad. Now I want to see, when you put the best of the best 14 teams going up against each other, then let's see the results and see how far the New York Giants are from, that level of competition.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
All right, man. Big shout out to all y'all for sending in the super chats, man. That definitely goes a long way to support our channel, and keep raising that bar over here on Authentic and the Beard. But let's get to the matchup of the hour, the one that the Beard has been waiting for. Could possibly be either the first of many previews that we do this year, or it could be maybe the last preview we do for the Washington Commanders. Let's get off into it. The Washington Commanders are traveling down 95 to take on Tampa, Baker, and the Buccaneers one time. Little lack of audio there on that game transition there. I guess that's what happens when you get a new computer. I didn't get to tell y'all that, but we are operating off a new computer today, man. So things are a little bit, I won't say not like not out of order, but just a little bit different today.
I like it. Silent but deadly intro,
Hey, maybe that means something. Maybe that means something for y'all. I was damn near about to play a beat when I heard it go silent there for a second. But the Commanders are coming in as the number 6 seed. The Tampa Baker Buccaneers are the number 3 seed. But when you look at the records here, Commanders are likely the better team here. They're a 12-5 team. The Bucs are a 10-7 team. The Bucs are still favored at home by 3 points. So I guess that's a pick 'em if you give the advantage to the home team. The over-under is 50.5 in this one. Last week, the Commanders beat the Cowboys. I went to go do my Bleacher Report recap. The Commanders were down on the scoreboard. I was like, dang, they're going to lose a game here with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. Went to go check the scoreboard later. They ended up winning that game 23-19. The Bucs beat the Saints in a comeback victory 27-19. They didn't even need that victory because the Carolina Panthers did take care of the Atlanta Falcons, which eliminated the Falcons and would have had the Bucs in the playoffs regardless. Last meeting, it was week 1. Washington lost to the Bucs 37-20 in Jaden Daniels' debut. Now, the Commanders went from number 2 pick to number 6 seed, which is an amazing accomplishment for a team that we were looking at as being in the rebuild. So this is kind of like going to the casino, hitting on the craps table for some big money, and you like, hey, let's stick around and roll these dice a little bit longer, right? Washington is 6-4 all-time in the wild card round. The Commanders' last win coming against Tampa Bay in 2005, which is kind of crazy.
In Tampa Bay.
In Tampa Bay. The Commanders are 1-2 versus the Bucs in the playoffs, though, so that is something to consider there. The Bucs and Commanders have split the last 10 games, 5 apiece, and the Bucs have won 3 out of the last 5 versus the Commanders in Tampa Bay. Now, for me, the most important thing in this matchup here, I love the coaching matchup. Todd Bowles going up against Dan Quinn, I love that, but the most important matchup is right there for everybody to see. It's going to be between the 2 quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, a guy who's a rookie, hit the ground running. A lot of my New York Giants fans are saying, all we got to do is get our Jaden Daniels. We'll be good to go, man. We can start him from week 1. I don't know if we're going to be able to find a Jaden Daniels in this draft, the next draft, the next draft. You get the point here. But Jaden Daniels, 25 touchdowns this year, 9 interceptions, 3,568 yards in his rookie campaign. The 4th best QBR in the NFL at 70.6. The Bucs are going to have to try to find a way to contain Jaden Daniels. I think that's where their game plan starts, okay? Jaden Daniels, when it comes to scrambles from the quarterback position, has the most scrambles of any quarterback in the entire National Football League with 78 scrambles, and he's a good chunk above most of the other quarterbacks. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to have to rely on Vita Vea to get pressure up the middle. Not only are they going to have to contain and keep Jaden in the pocket, but when he decides to step up in the pocket, you would hope that if you're a Bucs fan, Vita Vea can lay some of that 303,000-pound frame on top of Jaden Daniels. The recipe that Todd Bowles used against Jalen Hurts, I think, is what we're going to kind of see in this one. I do know that Jaden Daniels is more of a dynamic runner than Jalen Hurts is, but if you look at the way that Todd Bowles, who they have not fared that well against running quarterbacks this year, but the way that he handled Jalen Hurts this season and in the playoffs, what was that, two seasons
ago? Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago? I believe it was 2 years ago. You know, he definitely knows how to stop rushing quarterbacks, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he tries to game plan against Jaden Daniels. And I think that the goal here would be to force Jaden Daniels to beat you with his arm. You don't want Jaden Daniels converting those third and longs with his legs and opening things up in the running game as well, because I think that's also going to free up some space for Brian Robinson as well. And once Jaden Daniels gets his legs going, I mean, he's the kind of guy that can put up 350, damn near 400 yards of total offense and beat you single-handedly. I do think it's going to be a tougher task, though, to stop Jaden Daniels than it is to stop a Jalen Hurts from that running type of standpoint. Now, Baker Mayfield, a guy that, you know, shout out to Geno Smith, you know, a lot of people wrote Baker Mayfield off, and he didn't write back. Okay?
Not these two guys. We didn't.
Yeah, we were big Baker Mayfield fans, big Geno Smith fans, too. When people were saying the Seattle Seahawks are tanking for a quarterback, I was the one saying, wait a minute. Geno Smith had 5 games last season of a passer rating of over 100 in, relief for Russell Wilson. So I knew he was pretty capable, at least, to be able to come into the league and be serviceable. Now, Baker Mayfield this year has been much more than serviceable. He has 4,500 yards through the air, 41 touchdowns, 16 interceptions, okay? In the first matchup against the Washington Commanders, he had 4 touchdowns through the air. Yeah. Baker's had a QBR above 90. I'm not talking about passer rating. I'm talking about QBR above 90 in 3 of his last 4 games. You can only get to 100. And yes, you have to contain Baker Mayfield in the pocket. He has been running the ball as of late. I want to say he had a career best 68 rushing yards last week against the New Orleans Saints. Baker has the 3rd most explosive runs of any quarterback in the National Football League this season, which makes no damn sense. Okay, that makes no sense, okay? But Baker is a smart veteran, and he knows how to take care of the ball. Yeah. He was sacked just 3 times in the last 2 games, but in the previous 4 weeks, he was sacked 13 times in 4 games. They still won a lot of games during that stretch of those 4 games. The Panthers sacked Baker Mayfield 4 times and barely lost to the Bucs. That game had to go to overtime in a victory for them, 26-23. The scary part, not Terry McLaurin either, is that the Commanders' pass defense is ranked 3rd in the NFL. I'm extremely surprised.
Don't ask me. Do not ask me how. I had to double check. I scratched it out like 3 times on my notepad, bro.
Am I looking at the wrong year here? What am I not getting here? But the Tennessee Titans were up there too, and they're not a good team either. But let me not say either, because y'all are a good team, right? That's kind of that was a little bit of shade, Georgia. I didn't mean to do that. I'm team Commanders today, Beard. But the second matchup I want to talk about, and I'll try to fly through this so we can get to the Beard's thoughts and his roadmap as well. Bucky Irving versus Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson has been in a bit of a funk as of lately. Hasn't rushed for 70 or more yards since week 14. Has not scored a touchdown in 5 straight weeks. The Commanders have been winning on the shoulders of Jaden Daniels doing too much, I'll say. And we know that sometimes when you're doing too much, you can kind of end up, you want to fuck around, you can fuck around and find out. Right? Now, Robinson has averaged more than 3.5 yards per carry just once in the last 4 games. And he has 5 games this season where he averaged under 3 yards per carry. This is the guy that I said was the best player on the Washington Commanders a season ago before Jaden Daniels got there, and I feel like he hasn't been living up to it. I think it'd be nice if you could see Austin Eckler contribute in this matchup. You know, I know he's just getting back off the IR and whatnot. Didn't really have a productive week last week too much, but they did kind of, have him on a bit of a pitch count a little bit here. But the Washington Commanders, 120 yards, right? That was the theme in the Eagles-Packers matchup. You guys are 9-2 when you rush for over 120 more yards. That's 7th best in the NFL. So get to that number. I know the Beard's going to have his roadmap ready to go. He might want to adjust whatever number he had for the rushing yards mark.
I wanted to double check. We're very close.
Right,
we're really close.
Where we at with it. But 120 is going to be the number for me, right? Now, Bucky Irving, he's kind of the opposite. He's not in a funk right now. He has 3 100-yard performances in the last 6 games, 5 touchdowns in the last 8 matchups. He is now the lead running back in Tampa Bay. He has taken upon the majority of the touches over there in that backfield. Bucky has just 2 double-digit carry games in the first 9 weeks of the season. He has 7 double-digit attempt games in the last 8 games. When it comes to the passing game, though, they're not utilizing him that much. He has 0 receiving touchdowns on the entire year. So that's where I think, you might see the other running backs maybe step in and try to, contribute in that fashion there. Now, I wanted to talk about this. This will be the last thing here. Rushing stats with and without the quarterback. I think these are very important here. The Commanders are 3rd in rushing in the NFL, 154.1 rushing yards per game. The Buccaneers are 4th in rushing in the NFL at 149.2 yards per game. So we're really looking at just a 5-yard difference, in rushing yards per game for each of these 2 teams. But Jaden Daniels averages 52.4 rushing yards per game. Subtract that from the 154, we're left with about 100 yards per game. Baker Mayfield averages 22.2 rushing yards per game. You subtract that away from the 149.2, it's looking like from a running back standpoint, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can run the ball a little bit better than the Washington Commanders can. Now, Washington, that will put them at 101.7 rushing yards per game without the quarterback. That puts Tampa Bay at 26 yards higher than that at 127 yards per game on the ground without the quarterback. To me, it's still going to fall on Jaden Daniels' shoulders in this game. And it's still going to fall on Baker Mayfield's shoulders in this game as well. Whichever quarterback plays better, doesn't turn the ball over more, is likely going to win this game. And I really, truly think, unless you can convince me otherwise, which I know you're not going to do that right now because I'm sure you got your whole Homer vibes on 3,000 right now, okay? But I think Jaden Daniels is going to be, and maybe not from a statistical standpoint, but just from the eye test and an effective standpoint, I think he's going to be the better quarterback in this game. That's why I'm leaning towards picking the Washington Commanders.
Listen, when I was digging into these numbers and this matchup, it's kind of surprising where Tampa Bay falls in a lot of these statistical categories. They're a good team. They're a good team. And I think that they went through a little bit of a funk, and a lot of that had to do with them trying to readjust to life without Godwin, so that they found a way. Shout out to Jalen McMillan. That dude has been balling out, especially over the last couple of weeks. Like they found something in McMillan. So he's found a way to fill that Godwin role, which is kind of scary for me. And listen, if you guys want to check the receipts, go all the way back because your boy the Beard's been talking about Bucky Irving for a long time.
Okay, hold on. Before we move on from Jalen McMillan real quick, though.
Yeah.
Because I was just waiting to see if you were going to break down some of the numbers because I was going to leave that
throw him out there. Throw him out there.
For a finalizing point, right?
Let's do it.
Jalen McMillan, okay? He's averaged 11 yards per reception in 7 straight games now after pretty much starting the season without having any games averaging over 11. But his first 2 games, he had 1 catch in each of those games where he did average over 11. It was like some big number, like 22 or something. He has a touchdown in 5 straight games. 7 of his 8 touchdowns have came in the last 5 games. So you talk about a guy that got, hot at the right time for his team.
Yeah.
It's definitely Jalen McMillan, who was the 3rd option at Washington coming out of college too, which is kind of interesting.
And a lot, it's interesting because a lot of people kind of were talking about him and, he kind of fell under the radar out of all those guys out of Washington. But he's definitely proven to be a fantastic pickup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Bucky Irving, that's a guy, I drafted him in fantasy football. I didn't pick him up off the waiver wires. I drafted him. I love what he can do. And I think that they finally have, I'd say about midway through the season, you really started to see the shift. But now you've kind of see it full throttle here. And nothing against Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White is a good running back. Mm-hmm. I think they found what works best for them now and how they utilize those 2 guys. And don't forget they got Sean Tucker coming out as the 3rd running back, who's another
who had
really
that
good
one massive game and then really didn't hear about him much more after that.
So both of these teams can put up points. Washington's number 5 in the league at 28.5 points per game. Yeah, I mean, listen, we've had the worst of the worst when it comes to offensive coordinators. You know, a guy who I will always eat the crow. I thought Eric Bieniemy was going to be that guy. He was not.
Yeah,
and before that, we had Scott Turner, who I used to come on here every damn week and I used to drive me absolutely nuts. But, we're scoring 28.5 points per game. It's amazing. And, Tampa Bay, one more point than us. They're the number 4 scoring team in the NFL at 29.5. Both of these teams defensively give up a good amount of points. We're 16 at 22.6. Tampa Bay is 18 at 23 points. So, that's going to be something to keep your eye on. I talked about time of possession earlier on. Tampa Bay is number 2 in the NFL in time of possession at 32 minutes and 7 seconds. Washington, I was surprised. Now, there's not a big difference here in the actual time. The ranking there is, we're 13th in the NFL, but we're still controlling the clock by 29 seconds on average in a game. We're averaging 30 minutes and 29 seconds time of possession. Turnover differential is going to be huge here. Washington has done really good this year at not turning the ball over, but more so in the beginning of the season. Jaden Daniels has had a few more interceptions in the back half of this season. A lot of those have just been a little bit of high pass here, a couple of tip passes, a couple of drop balls into defensive hands, but still, nonetheless, a turnover is a turnover. And they were struggling early on in producing turnovers. I feel like we've gotten a little bit better at producing turnovers defensively in the back end of the half. So we're sitting at 15th in the NFL at +1 turnover differential. Tampa Bay, though, they are the 11th worst turnover differential team in the NFL. They are -5 in the turnover differential. So that's going to be a number where Washington's going to, have to take care of the ball, and they're going to have to try and find a way to force some turnovers. Now, passing, you talked about some of this stuff, the yardage-wise. Let's get into some interception percentages. I talked about the turnovers and Washington struggling at times to force turnovers. They have the 7th lowest interception rate defensively at 1.4%. But on the other hand, Tampa Bay, 6th highest interception percentage when throwing the ball at 2.8. So exactly double of what Washington is producing. So Washington has to find a way to get an interception or two in this game. Saren still has been playing very good. As of late, he's made some big plays. Quan Martin is a guy I think a lot of people have forgotten about, and he has played very well for the Commanders. Jeremy Chin on the back end there too. We are going to have Marshawn Lattimore, who is full participant in practice this week. When we got Marshawn Lattimore, you didn't really think about it being this important to this game. But if you know football, some of the best battles in the NFL is Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore.
Absolutely.
Just go look it up. You'll find, I'm sure, a million mixtape clips of those two guys going at it. So that's going to be huge for us. And you talk about Vita Vea. Tyler Biadasz is apparently going to be playing in this game. You've heard me talk about him and how important he is at the center position for this offense because he does so much. A lot of the pre-snap calls and stuff, it comes from him. When he wasn't in, you saw the guards making the pre-snap calls instead of the backup center. Yeah. So that's going to be something that's going to be very important here. It's a good matchup to look at because a lot of Jaden Daniels' runs, some more successful runs, have come up the middle. So I think that when you said that, my eyes lit up because that is a matchup that's going to be very important between Biadasz and Vita Vea. So keep your eye on that. Now we're going to talk about some passing yards per game here. Washington allows the third fewest, as you said, 189.5. Tampa Bay, third most. 250.4 yards passing per game. That is literally like a 60-yard differential there per game and what we're allowing, what they're putting up. So that's going to be a good matchup here. I mean, Mike Evans, first ballot Hall of Famer. We all know that. We're big Mike Evans guys here. I thought it was an amazing scene last week when he got that 1,000 yards. And then people who say that it doesn't matter It's an individual thing. Guys on the team want their guys to get to that point. You saw how excited that team was.
For him.
You know, and I love to see that as a former football player and a football YouTube analyst. I love to see that for my guy Mike Evans, but not this week, obviously. We don't want to see that. Now, you talked about the rushing yards, and it was interesting because it's been about, I want to say, 4 weeks now since you first brought that up, about the difference between, you know, your running statistics with and without the quarterback. And so I've been eyeing that so much more now since you've brought that to light. And last week against Dallas, I want to say it was 75% of the Commanders' rushing yards came from the quarterback position. Marcus Mariota was our leading rusher last week.
I'm a big fan.
fan. So I literally, we need to find a way to get back to, you know, a little bit more productivity from the running back position. And I think having Austin Eckler helps Brian Robinson.
Yeah.
Because it allows them to utilize those two guys. If you remember early on, Cliff Kingsbury was running those packages with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler in the backfield at the same time. Like, if you telling me you got Jaden Daniels, Austin Eckler, and Brian Robinson in the backfield at the same time, that is going to cause absolute madness for the defensive coordinator. And those are the sort of things. There was some plays that I saw last week. Cliff Kingsbury was, listen, I love Cliff Kingsbury, and I have stood by him through all the hate when everything got debunked about all the Cliff Kingsbury teams and the offense dies down at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And we realized it wasn't the offense that died down. It was just, you know, him as a head coach, right?
Just not winning games late. That's all it was.
We're undefeated, baby, in the month of December.
5 straight
undefeated.
victories.
5 straight wins, undefeated in December. I mean, listen, life is good, okay? But, man, I don't know if you saw the play, and we talked about it a little bit on Twitter back and forth when Zacchaeus dropped that pass. And if you go back, and that play design was insane. Like, it was like the fake and handoff, fake the swing pass, but pass it to the guy coming back this way I mean, it was just a beautiful design. So I think that having Austin Eckler in the backfield is going to help Brian Robinson, hopefully. I mean, Washington, they're running the ball. You know, they're going up against Tampa Bay's run defense, though. They only allow 97.8 yards per game. That is number 4 rush defense in the NFL. The big difference here is Washington's run defense. They allow the 3rd most rushing yards per game, 137.5 yards per game. So that is where a lot of these stats here are very similar between these two teams, but that is a significant lopsided difference right there. And then, you know, you talk about the red zone, Washington and Tampa Bay, once again, very identical. Washington, 4th best red zone offense. 3rd best. Tampa Bay, 4th best. Washington, 6th best. Tampa Bay, 4th best in red zone offense. As far as defense goes, Washington is 11th worst. Tampa Bay, 14th best. So you're going to have to find a way to win that red zone battle. 3rd down offense, both of these teams really good. Washington, number 6. Tampa Bay, number 1 3rd down offense in the NFL. And a lot of that has to do with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is a guy that you got to get him down. You can't play a game, no arm tackling, no none of that stuff. You got to get him down because he always finds ways to get out of the backfield. It might not be pretty, it might not be flashy, but the guy does it. And that is going to be very important. Washington's going to have to find a way to get him down because Washington's 3rd down defense, about middle of the pack. Tampa Bay's about middle of the pack. 38.2 for Washington, 38.1 for Tampa Bay. So there's a lot of similarities here, but I think that 3rd down is going to be huge offensively for Washington. Because, I mean, defensively and the rushing game. And those two things kind of go side and side because you can't allow those big gains on the ground on 1st and 2nd down and then expect to stop Tampa Bay on 3rd and short all game long. So, like, that sort of area of the play calling defensively is going to be very important. And I think that there's going to be some things that Washington's going to have to do to win this game. And I think it's time to, you know, trigger the Waze roadmap to victory.
Let's get to it, man. I'm looking forward to this. Let's see where this roadmap goes.
Yeah, you're getting on the freeway. What? No, turn right. Get out of the lane. No. Okay, get procedure. Just get out the lane.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. We're on the road to Tampa Bay, and that road is hopefully going to contain a victory. In order to get to that victory, you're going to have to score 30 points, Washington. I'm just going to say it right now. You're going to have to put up 30 points. And, we talked about Mike Evans. We traded for Marshawn Lattimore, and I think we traded him for this moment to go up against his arch rival, his nemesis in Mike Evans. You got to hold Mike Evans to under 100 yards. I just talked about Baker Mayfield and how he can be a little elusive. He kind of looks like the Beard a little bit when he's back there playing quarterback. I'm going to need 4 sacks from my defense in this game. And it has been a brutal stretch here for the Washington Commanders and those yellow flags that come out of the Zebras' butts. I'm going to need under 5 penalties, guys. Buckle up. Get down to business, okay? I can't have these dumb penalties all game because they kill us. We talked about Tampa Bay, the ability to run. They got 1, they got 2, and maybe even a third guy, including Baker Mayfield. Hold Tampa Bay under 120 yards rushing. Sounds crazy, but I'm going to be realistic here. Under 120, that's 20 below what we're allowing per game right now. Now, on to our side of the ball. On to our RTDB. Jaden Daniels, you're going to need to put up at least 40 rushing yards in this game. I need 40 from Jaden Daniels. B-Rob, I'm not asking for too much, bud. Just give me 60 on the ground, okay? 60 from Brian Robinson. Here's the kicker. 40 from Austin Eckler. That puts us at a total of 140 rushing yards for the Washington Commanders. And last but certainly not least, when we get to our destination, you got to take the seatbelt off. You got to put the car in park. You got to take out the keys of the ignition. That is win time of possession, win third down, and win turnover battle. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the roadmap to victory for the Washington Commanders.
I like it. The kicker to the rushing yards was the best one for me. Because I'm like 60 from Brian Robinson. Wait a minute. What's going on here? We're going to need an effective game. I like a lot of what you said there. The difference with the Commanders when you have a Brian Robinson who's clicking on all cylinders when he can rush for over 100 yards is the difference in blowing a team out. If you look at the 3 games that he had this year where he went over 100 yards, the 2 out of the 3 of those games were blowouts. The only game where y'all didn't blow somebody out when Brian Robinson went over 100 yards was against my New York Giants.
Was that game 1 or game 2?
Game 2. It was game 2. So you could chalk it up to like really being early on in the season. But y'all blew out the Tennessee Titans 42-19. And the other one when Brian Robinson rushed for 100 yards was against the Arizona Cardinals, where y'all beat them 42-14. Carolina, he rushed for Marcus Mariota was a quarterback, and he rushed for 71 yards. And those are his 3 100-yard games of the year. So I definitely think if you can get Brian Robinson truly clicking, this might be one of them games where you'd be like, dang, I remember when the Arizona Cardinals came to face you guys, we're like, this should be a close matchup. I picked the Arizona Cardinals to win that game. But then you see Brian Robinson come out and, put up over 100 yards, and that game was nowhere near as close as I thought it was going to be. So you never know. This is a good Bucs team, like you just said, but I do think that if Brian Robinson comes out and gets back to true form, this could be one that could lean towards a victory for the Washington Commanders in a really easy way. And if not, I think you're going to put a lot on Jaden Daniels' shoulders, which he has shown throughout the year that he can handle it. There's games where Jaden Daniels is literally like 85-90% of the Washington Commanders' entire offense. It should be a lot of points scored in this game. This should be a straight-up boat race. Definitely looking forward to the Mike Evans matchup, but I also want to see wide receiver 1 versus wide receiver 1. I don't think Terry McLaurin can afford to have a lackluster game where we're talking 20, 30 yards or something like that. Terry McLaurin's got to get involved, and if it's not him, then you're going to have some role players step up, guys like Austin Eckler, like we mentioned earlier, or maybe even a guy like Zacchaeus who stepped up 2 weeks ago in a major way as well. The coaching matchup, Todd Bowles, man, we got to keep our eye on that. I think that's very important. And you talked about the turnovers. The Commanders are 10-3 when forcing 1 or more turnovers this season. 6th best in the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are winless when making less than 5 explosive pass plays in a game this season. It's worst in the NFL. So y'all know we talked about explosive plays all year long.
Yeah.
We talked about RTDB all year long, and we talked about turnover differential. The Beard brought that up, I want to say, in every matchup that the Commanders faced this year. So These are going to be three assets, I think, that are going to play very important roles in this matchup here. Look, I'll start this one off, man. I'm rolling with the Commies. I think they're going to win this one by possibly 2 scores, too. I think you guys can win this game by 10 points. I'm going to pick the Commanders to win this one. I think we're going to see this offense clicking on all cylinders. I'm going to go 34-24 in favor of the Commanders.
It's crazy. I saw big shout out to Bluegrass Picker. I saw him drop a score in the chat, and that is my exact score. I'm going Washington Commanders 31, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 27. You know what? I said I was not going to pick Washington to lose again, and we have not lost since I picked them to I said that I wasn't going to pick them to lose again. And hopefully we can keep this run going, and I'm excited. This is different.
Awesome.
This is a different level. Last time we were in the playoffs, it was Taylor Heineke, COVID season, Tom
7
Brady, 7 wins. Exactly. It was just, this is a different ride. And I mean, this is an exciting time in Washington. It's pretty crazy, to think that we're even here at 12 wins. I don't think there were people out there that were picking the Washington Commanders to win 3-4 games this year.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just going with the flow, thinking, they're in a rebuild, new quarterback, new coach, all these things are going to take time to get settled in. But I think the one thing people ignored that you didn't ignore was the strength of the schedule and looking at each game and seeing how you could be in these games. I mean, and there are some games there that, you look at some of these matchups early on in the year, that there are some games that you could have won early on, and the record could be even better. But I thought you guys handled business. You guys beat some tough teams down the stretch. That Atlanta Falcons victory was a great one in overtime. The victory against the Philadelphia Eagles after they had won 10 straight games, I think that proves that the Washington Commanders are a legitimate team, even though, the Eagles didn't have Jalen Hurts at the quarterback position for the entire duration of the game. It was still impressive nonetheless.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting matchup. I mean, prime time, too. Jaden Daniels has come through in prime time. This game is a night game. 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I mean, he's played under the lights against Cincinnati, monster game. And then the Atlanta Falcons game, came through, won the game in overtime, put the team on his back like Michael Jordan, and then so here we go. We're back in the prime time under the lights. I think Jaden Daniels is built for this.
I do too. He's not scared of these moments.
Yeah, when you play, for those of you that don't watch college football, when you play in the SEC and you play in some of these stadiums and you play in some of these atmospheres, especially in a primetime night game SEC, in most cases, it's bigger and crazier than I'd say 75-80% of the NFL stadiums. Mm-hmm. So he's built for this, and I think that's probably the most impressive thing about Jaden Daniels throughout this entire year. Watching Jaden Daniels play, the composure of him is you look at him like he's not a rookie almost at sometimes, just the way he plays the game. It's very, at times poised. It's just a poise. It's exciting to watch. I mean, the guys, did you see here is mic'd up?
I may have. What was the moment you talking about?
He was mic'd up for the game. I think it was the Atlanta game. He was mic'd up.
No, I didn't watch the whole thing.
He's in a pile, under a pile of 15 people, and he's just giggling. The guy is he's got ice in his veins. So yeah, so we'll see. It's going to be an exciting matchup. I'm excited. I'm going to be locked in Sunday night, man. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, it definitely is, man. And I'm glad you brought up the whole Sunday night football vibe, because I do think that Jaden Daniels is, he's going to shine bright under those bright lights. And Baker Mayfield, he's good under the bright lights as well. We saw him go into, when he was playing with the Los Angeles Rams on a Monday night, coming straight off the plane, let's get down to business and get this W here. So this should be a really good matchup. And I do think that, these matchups in the NFC this year in our conference, either team could win either one of these games that are going to be approaching this weekend. And I'm definitely going to be rooting for the Commanders, man. I think it would just be exciting for the podcast and for you as a fan, waiting this long to get your franchise quarterback, kind of getting teased a little bit during the RG3 era there. And now you truly have your franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels. And I want to see him perform big in this game. I think it'll yield well for you guys going into next season. And you never know, man. Once you're in, you have a shot at getting to the Super Bowl, man. You really do.
Yeah, it'd be a good little New York Giants run here, all Road Warriors.
It definitely would. It definitely would. Getting a little wild card spot, go on the road, beating teams. This is another thing, beating teams that you lost to in the regular season. That was a theme of the Giants' runs. The Bucs was one of those teams, I believe, one year. The Atlanta Falcons was a team. The Green Bay Packers was another team. The 49ers, and we ended up, going on those runs with Eli Manning. So I don't know about the chat, but for me as your co-host, bro, I'm rooting for you in a major way on Sunday. And who knows? I might get lit and have like a little gathering or something. So I'll keep you in the loop about that because don't forget Mo is a Bucs fan. Track is a Bucs fan. Well, we got some homies that are going to be rooting against you. But this homie will be rooting for you in this matchup. I'm definitely looking forward to it. But shout out to the gang, man. We appreciate all y'all pulling up, rocking out with us today for this NFC East recap, kind of at a different time. We're going to be experimenting with some different times here throughout the college playoffs and the NFL playoffs, just kind of trying to align things properly so that the Beard and his, Notre Dame Fighting Irish can, be seen in full length and not have to worry about doing a show in the middle of the game. I saw some people in the chat kind of rooting for the Irish as well, too, man. So best of luck in that game, too. Everything going great for you. You got baby on the way, wifey at home. You got Irish. You got the Commanders. Here I am sitting here with my New York Giants. We don't even got a quarterback on the roster.
We went to the doctor yesterday and got a good checkup on the baby. The baby is due February 28th. And right now, it's currently 4 pounds, 10 ounces. So Josie says
28th would be tight, yo. That could be a leap year baby, man. I knew one homie that had a birthday on the 29th or something, and then when it's not there, they got to celebrate their birthday on the day before.
It's
kind of tight.
So we're excited about that. The baby came in at 4 pounds, 10 ounces right now. So he's getting pretty big, and I have found a little baby Redskins vintage jacket that my boy Eric OBX Picker had sent me a couple years ago. He's like, just in case you might need this one day. So I'm pretty excited about that. And Josie said, ask your mom, how much did you weigh when you were born? And I sent my mom a message. I said, Mom, how much did I weigh when I was born? She said 7 pounds, 11 ounces. I was like, are you serious? Are you sure? 7'11"? She said,
7'11" with a pack of Crunch Donuts. 2 taquitos, a pack of Crunch Donuts, and a Gatorade or something. No. Let me take away the Gatorade. It'd have to be like an energy drink or something like that. A little Celsius. Yeah, exactly. I noticed.
Still waiting for that sponsorship, man. Shout out Celsius.
Big facts, man. But any last words before we get the fam out of here?
Man.
Go Irish.
Last words. Go Irish. And everybody enjoy the college football. I mean, enjoy the playoff football weekend. We get games on Saturday, Sunday. Today, I think, isn't the Ohio State game is on Friday night, right?
I got to take a look at the schedule. My today has been so crammed and packed with so much stuff going on. I haven't had a chance
and let's not forget, we got Authentic on Bleacher Report.
Yeah,
today,
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. I'll be out there. We're going to be talking about free agents that we could decide on bringing back, guys who have expiring contracts. I'm going to speak a little bit about the Shane Bowen situation. Some people saying he should be fired. I'll speak on that a little bit as well, too, and kind of update, the draft process of how I'm looking at things if we miss out on the top 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's going to be that's going to be a funny one, little shakeup here. So, yeah, Deaton says 7:30 tomorrow. So you got 4 days in a row here, ladies and gentlemen, of football between college football playoffs and NFL playoffs. Can't beat it.
Yeah, man. And for those of y'all that are interested in the quarterback situation, especially for the New York Giants, I just got my hands on a ton of all-22 college tape.
Nice.
A bunch of all-22 from Shadur, Cam Ward, and Jackson Dart. So I'm going to be breaking down a lot of these prospects coming up here in the next few weeks here. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. And some of the compilations that we were doing throughout the year, I'll be continuing to do those throughout the playoffs. Drew Aller definitely being a guy now that has entered the conversation as well, too. Definitely going to be doing some videos on him as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Let's get y'all up out of here, man. I'm looking forward to this football weekend. I'm going to get to just sit back and chill and watch games on Sunday. It's going to be an amazing thing, not having to worry about a wishful New York Giants loss, on the week. The season is over for us, but we're definitely going to be prepping up for the draft and whatnot coming up here. But the Beard and his Washington Commanders got a big game coming up on Sunday night. We're going to be rooting for them as well. Y'all know how we end every show over here, y'all. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. And a life without dreams is a life in black and white. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT, Combat Jack. And that's a wrap, y'all. We appreciate y'all time. enjoy y'all football weekend. It is going to be a fun-filled football weekend with a bunch of college ball, a bunch of NFL stuff. Playoffs are on the line. Some of these teams are going to be sitting on the couch with them New York Giants come the end of this weekend. We'll be looking forward to it. Make sure to tap back in. We might do some impromptu content over the weekend possibly, but we'll definitely be back for the recap of these 2 playoff games on maybe Monday, maybe possibly Monday, considering that we won't have a Giant overreaction, but worst case, it'll be Tuesday. Salute to everybody who has supported us throughout this whole entire season. It's been a blessing for us to be able to come up here and talk ball with y'all. And also catch us on Bleacher Report here in about an hour and a half here and some change at 6 o'clock if you want to talk a little bit more New York Giants football. Enjoy the rest of y'all day. Y'all be blessed, man. Peace.
Peace.
Spike don't care.